Okay guys, today we are working on testing the new data transfer system. We actually did some of that yesterday, but it was at the tail end of the day. I had finally finished adding all the code and reviewing everything, and I started to debug and we didn't finish, but I started to suspect the problem that we were dealing with. So let's make sure we're on the right branch, which we are. We're on secondary. That's good. Okay, so we are dealing with a crash bug, which was immediately discovered, and it's a new bug after we implemented the data transfer. What does the F stand for? Data transfer modification. It's not DTF, it's DTM. Idiot. Anyway, so yeah, the data transfer modification, and we concluded that a possible cause of the crash had to do with the client terminating while waiting for data reception due to the new 4-second wait that we added. We tried to change the 4-second wait to 0-second wait, effectively reversing the wait times to a state prior to the DTM implementation. It still crashed, although it seemed to crash a split second later. Maybe, like, virtually it didn't fix it. So anyway, still expect this to be the issue. Still expect socket time out or something like that to be the issue, and that's where we're at right now. So yesterday I had started looking up about socket, the socket module, and timing out and everything. So I think what I'll do is I'm gonna do exactly what my things to do says, which is look into the socket module timeout settings, because we think the socket's timing out during this 4-second wait that we added, because we didn't have this issue. It could be something simple, like having the wrong IP address, but we already reviewed that and fixed the IP address just to verify. We can put 192. We did Control Shift F to search the entire project, and it's 192.168.1141, 192.168.1141. So it's the same thing. It's the only two places that they're used. So it's not the IP, and you know, it makes sense because let's just show real quick. We're gonna call server. Oh yeah, I have to allow access to this. All right. Now by client, I re-enabled my firewall. I had it disabled when I was doing all this networking stuff, with having to get my new modem and router and all that good stuff. Anyway, okay, so it's actually working, but it's not. That's a different bug. I need to fix that. It's something where sometimes it, meaning the game, assumes that the second player, the second client, hasn't connected yet. But you know, it's one of those bugs that's like, it only takes 3 seconds to kill the script. It's no big deal for me. I'll fix it eventually. But anyway, so this is the real bug that we're dealing with right now. Is we have this. I have modified the network file to print out the header string, because that was the specific source of the crash. It was saying that the header string was not a proper, here we go, it was a value error, invalid literal for int with base 10, and that is almost always whenever you that's whenever this right here, the int of header amount, is trying to convert it to an integer, and it can't, because there's like something wrong with that header amount. But when we see, you can see right here, it prints out this header string and it's empty. And I wonder if that's because it's not, the data has ceased to be transmitted. But it could be something else. I don't want to just assume that this is the problem due to the 4-second wait, because it says an existing connection was forcibly closed by the remote host. And so it's trying to, let's see, it did line 584 in client, which is ink data equals n.receive, and then this is in the network file, because it calls network.receive. Receive data equals socket.receive of header amount, and it says that at this point, trying to execute this socket.receive, we get a connection reset error. An existing connection was forcibly closed by the remote host. So let's just go ahead and look this up real quick, just to see if there's a mentioning of but yeah, I forgot to add my stream. Be closed by the remote host. Alright, so post a stream, dude, and make sure that's working. Yep, and it does. Okay, cool. So you can close that, and also that, and now we're gonna search for this connection reset error, but let me pull it up and copy it. There we go. Alright. Python, existing connection was forcibly closed by the remote host. This can be caused by the two sides of the connection disagreeing over whether the connection timed out or not during a keep alive. Your code tries to reuse the connection just as the server is closing it because it has been idle for too long. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure this is the deal. You should basically just retry the operation over a new connection. I'm surprised your library doesn't do this automatically. I have the same problem using a bottle library and setting with this very close to it solved it for me. For example, user agent accept. Here's an example. Okay. There are many causes such as the network link between server client may be temporarily going down, running out of system sending off on data, Wireshark, or you can just Okay, yeah, so I'm seeing some keywords like timing out, keeping alive, etc., and those sort of things. So I still do suspect the Python timeout thing. So we're gonna say Python socket timeout. And let's look at we'll go to the docs themselves, and Well, actually, just go to Python documentation, and I need to add this as a bookmark in my programming file, because I'm sure I'll use it a lot. Okay, so let's read up on this. Let's go specifically to timeout. Okay, so we have notes on socket timeouts. Let's go here. Okay, a socket object can be in one of three modes: blocking, non-blocking, or timeout. Sockets are by default always created in blocking mode, but this can be changed by calling set default timeout. In blocking mode, operations block until complete, or the system returns an error such as connection timed out. And I'm not reading anymore, I'm commenting on what I just read. I think that the reason for them being in blocking mode usually is because you're receiving like a byte stream of, like, you know, you're receiving data through the byte stream or whatever it's called, and I would guess that if it wasn't blocking, meaning that like the process could be interrupted with a different process, then that would affect the like proper reception of that data. It could corrupt it, in other words. I don't know if that's true. I should learn more about that. So, but anyway, that's what I'm assuming. So we'll keep reading. In non-blocking mode, operations fail with an error that is unfortunately system dependent if they cannot be completed immediately. Operations fail if they cannot be completed immediately. If functions from the select module can be used to know when and whether a socket is available for reading or writing. In timeout mode, operations fail if they cannot be completed within, such as connection timed out. And is that the error that we're getting? We're getting connection reset error. Let me just look at that one more time. We're going to pull that one up specifically. Connection reset error. We'll say Stack Overflow Python connection reset error. Okay. No, that's not it. Let's just look for Python connection reset error. A subclass of connection error raised when a connection is reset by the peer. Corresponds to okay. So this is mentioning retry if you get the connection reset error, and then it will. So yeah, this is related to retrying, being timed out, or like, I don't actually know what timing out is, but I'm assuming that timing out is it gives it a certain amount of time. instead of expecting it to be there immediately. Like if it's not in timeout mode, it's just gonna expect the data to be there or this whatever to be ready, and if it's not ready, it's like, ah, too late. We're throwing an error. So it says, in timeout mode, operations fail if they cannot be completed within the timeout specified for the socket. They raise a timeout exception, or if the system returns an error. At the operating system level, sockets in timeout mode are internally set in non-blocking mode. Okay, that makes sense. Also, the blocking and timeout modes are shared. The blocking and timeout modes are shared between file descriptors and socket objects that refer to the same network endpoint. This implementation detail can have visible consequences if, for example, you decide to use the file number of a socket. Okay. Timeouts and the connection method. The connect operation is also subject to the timeout setting. The connect operation is also subject to the timeout setting. And in general, it is recommended to call set timeout before calling connect, or pass a timeout parameter to create connection. However, the system network stack may also return a connection timeout error if of its own, regardless of any Python socket timeout setting. Okay, I had to go grab something. So we're gonna keep reading about all this until I fully understand how this stuff works. So it says timeouts in the except method if get default timeout is not none, sockets returned by the except method inherit that timeout. Get default timeout is not none. Sockets returned by the except method will inherit that timeout, otherwise it may. Okay. Alright, so I think so I get all that. Go to the first instance of it. Okay. Let's look at dot timeout. Okay, here we go. So we have, or rather, timeout open parentheses. This exception is raised when a timeout occurs on a socket which has had timeouts enabled via a prior call to set timeout. Okay, here we go. Socket.set timeout value. Set a timeout on blocking socket operations. The value, so this is like a timeout from blocking. It's like sleep, sort of, for the socket. Am I understanding that right? The value argument can be a non-negative floating point number expressing seconds, or none. If a non-zero value is given, subsequent socket operations will raise a timeout exception if the timeout period value has elapsed before the operation has completed. Okay. If 0 is given, the socket is put in non-blocking mode. If none is given, the socket is put in blocking mode. Okay, now what I don't understand, let's look up a little video because usually people can explain this stuff like pretty quickly. Let's see, in an easier way to understand. So we'll say Python socket timeout. How to set timeout, okay. Socket timeout and options. Please, not the Indian people. The Indian, they're just not so easy to understand. Let's see. Okay, I might actually watch this one day, this whole little series, to better understand sockets and all that, but for now,
hey guys, welcome to this course on
we're just looking for a little. Okay, so it looks like the first two are going to be applying to what we're looking for specifically.
Seeing if you're pre-approved will never
have learned that how you can convert your string IP notation to a binary IP address. So this is from the previous example. In this video I will show you that how you can set a timeout to a socket, and this will be a short video. So first let me import socket, and now let me create diff test let me socket timeout. First you need to create the socket, so socket.socket, and for the family I want to give it if inet, and for the type I want to successful. After this, first let me and okay, socket timeout convert to str is dot get timeout. Dot get timeout, yeah, this. So this is the default socket timeout. Now I want to set a timeout to this, so s dot set timeout and 100. And now I'm going to print this again. So this method in here, socket timeout. Now let me just run it. Now you can see that socket created successfully. This is the default socket timeout we have now, and we have set the timeout, and now you can see current socket timeout is on. So thank you guys, I will have a short video video, and we have set the timeout, and now you can see current socket timeout is on.
Okay, yeah, that was one of those videos where it's just like, you know, I don't want to bash anybody, but you know, whatever. So we'll say Python. Actually, what is a socket timeout? Because I really just want to know what is a timeout. Timeouts are caused when a TCP socket times out talking to the far end. So it's like asleep or taking a break. Socket timeouts can occur when attempting to connect to a remote server or during a communication, especially long-lived ones. Gotcha. Okay. A socket timeout stops the connection after a specified amount of time. The socket timeout command is usually created in object-oriented programming or network programming and keeps the socket from creating inflated problems by severing the connection. Okay. Alright. A socket timeout is dedicated to monitor the continuous incoming data flow. If the data flow is if the data flow is interrupted for the specified time, the connection is considered as stalled broken. Okay, of course this only works with connections where data is received all the time and there are no delays longer than the configured socket timeout. Okay. Yeah, so I understood it correctly. It's basically, yeah, it's like the equivalent of sleep, or you know, something of that nature. It just is like taking a break, waiting for data to be there instead of being like, there's no data there, it's not ready, so we're gonna sever the connection. So what we need to do, I think, is to set the timeout. So we'll do socket.set timeout and then pass in a value in seconds. So first we'll close this Python instance, and so now, yeah, we need to be in network, I think. So here's what we have to do. We have to find the correct location to add this. Self.s is socket, that's not good. Okay. So a socket is like the end point, right? So we have a, let's see, socket equals n.connect, and then we have n.get client ID from the socket. Okay. So let's start on server side first. Server side, we have .s as the socket. So initially we say self.s.bind. We're binding the socket to the server, which is my local machine, and we're using the port 5555, and then we're listening for actually I remember going through listen, but anyway, I'm not worried about that right now. Then we start accepting clients, and we do self.s.accept to initiate the connection with one of the clients. And I'm a little bit rusty on the sockets thing. I don't remember exactly, like, if when I call self.s, does that mean it's creating a new socket each time I call that? I don't think so. I think it's just the one socket. Which would mean I only need to create a I would only need to call the set timeout on the one socket. I wouldn't have to like do it twice. So the issue actually starts once the game has started. But I guess, I don't know, I'm trying to figure out the right way, like the right spot to add this line in. Definitely not down here. So we say server. And I want to say all this down here should actually be within a if name is equal to main, because I don't think I import it anywhere, but I think it's best practice to do that. So I'm going to add this right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'll say below rest of file added 315.24. I'm quite sure it's best practice to have this within an if name is equal to main. Okay. Before doing this, ensure it won't cause any bugs. Okay. So the client socket is this network socket. That's the endpoint for the client. So we import network. Yeah, we import network. It says network is not accessed. Okay, we say from network import message header and then n. So we actually just import n. Looks like this card is not being used. Okay. So yeah, we're importing n, and n is the network object instance. And then we are, whenever we begin to, when we call the client script, we execute socket equals n.connect, which is going here and connecting, calling this function, which calls self.network socket.connect. So this is so I'm like, it can't be the same socket though, right? Because for each client they have to have a different socket, isn't that right? There's no way that a socket is meant to be, it's like a plug. It's the way I view a socket, it's like a plug, and you can only plug one thing into it, like a receptacle, a single receptacle. It doesn't have two like plugs. It only has one. Is that a correct understanding? Is a socket only for one connection?
According to Interview Ready, one on the client and one on the server. One server socket can be used to maintain multiple connections. This means that there really is no limit to the number of users who can connect to your cloud server.
So one server socket can be used to maintain multiple connections. Can multiple devices connect to the same socket? Because I'm confused about this. I don't remember. So a socket can have multiple. So now this is back to basics here, but I just don't remember this. It's been so long since I messed with this. I can't remember if because there's only the one instance. There's only where we create n, and then we are then connecting to this one network object's socket. But I guess that we have multiple connections on this one socket. Python, should you only have one connection per socket? Some of these for just one outgoing connection at a time. Each of your scan threads will need its own socket. You cannot connect stream socket multiple times. Stream sockets, yeah, and we're using stream sockets. That's the type. Sock stream. Okay, I don't want to like go too far off and do a full study of sockets, but I do need to actually see something. First, I'm gonna put non-pressing issues, wills, but go through all files and delete unused imports. VS Code fades the color from these instances. Yeah, so like I don't want to do a complete study on sockets and all that. I remember like I went through this before and I was using socket and then socket 2, but like for whatever reason I just started using like this one, and as I'm reading this code, my understanding is that we have the single network object. We don't create another network object. We just have the one, N. It gets imported whenever we call client, and because we say import N up here, and then we run n.connect, which will call connect, passing in the address to the network socket, which is just one socket. Now whenever we do that the second time, I'm just like, is this the same object? Is N the same object? Like, is it coded correctly? I mean, because I'm on the same computer, I guess I could say that it might behave differently, because whenever having trouble like thinking about this clearly. So we have the client module, the client file script. We call the begin running the client script from the terminal for each client. And we import in to each of those clients. So my question is, the specific question is, since we're importing in twice on from two different places, from client 1's terminal and then from client 2's terminal, does that mean that we actually have two sockets, or does that mean that we only have the one socket? And I'm pretty sure it's two sockets. Because wouldn't that mean if we only had one socket, wouldn't that mean that we would receive data that was coming from the other client? You know what I mean? Like, wouldn't the flow of the transfer of data include, like, be muddied? It would be mixed. Like, we would have client 1 data going through the same socket connection as client 2. So that's a question I need to know. I mean, I know that it works because I've been using it for a long time, but I don't understand how it works, which is why I had put a caution comment here about network socket 2, and I'm going to basically do the same thing here because I want to know. It's important to know how that works. This is 3:15:24, and we're going to say when debugging data transfer modification and reviewing socket, my socket implement, I realized I didn't fully understand whether or not when the client imports in and calls connect on the socket, that this meant we were creating two sockets, or whether we were using one socket with two connections. In other words, I'm not sure if both clients are connected to this same socket, or that whenever we import in from each client, or however this would be executed, understood, there are 2 sockets created. And then I'm going to put this in things to do, and I'm going to put this in non-pressing issues. And this specifically is for, I'll just literally copy the line. Okay, yeah, that's good. Alright. So I am leaning towards the fact that like we're using 2 different sockets, but I think either way it's similar to having a function defined in one place and then imported in another place. Like as long as I put like I could probably down here after network set the timeout for the socket, and you see what I'm saying? I could probably say n.network socket and then set the timeout, call set timeout on it right here. Or I could put it in client like right here. Because I don't know if this is actually the correct terminology. I put socket equals n.connect, but I don't think that's the true terminology. I think the better, more precise terminology for this would be connection equals n.connect. The connection is through the socket, but this connection is not in and of itself the socket. So we're gonna add another caution comment here, and this is all stuff that has to be understood for me to advance any further. You know, there's no point in trying to move forward pretending like I understand something I don't. All that is gonna do is create more problems with me down the line. So it is painful and it takes a lot longer to do it this way, but it's just the way that it has to be done. So we'll just put when reviewing socket logic I realized I don't completely understand how many sockets are used, how it all works, etc. And I am now fairly convinced this the below lines namespace for the var socket should actually be connection or something that more precisely represents the idea that the n.connect doesn't create the socket, but rather creates the connection through the socket or via the socket. Need to review and better understand the networking thing before I make a decision. Be sure to change all instances of this so as not to cause bugs if when I do change it. Alright. So I think where we'll add it for client, because we were going to start on server, but we'll just do it on client. I think what we need to do is for just a real quick, let's see this. We'll go. What is a socket programming? Okay, so a socket is one endpoint of a two-way communication link between two programs running on the network. A socket is bound to a port number. A socket is a software structure within a network node of a computer network that serves as an endpoint for sending and receiving data across the network. Okay, yeah, and that's how I understood it. It's a software structure within a network node of a computer network that serves as an endpoint for sending and receiving data across the network. Gotcha. Like a plug. You know, a socket, same thing like when you plug something into a socket in the wall, same thing. The structure and properties of a socket are defined by an application programming interface for the networking architecture. Okay, but my question is, can you have multiple connections on a socket? Like, it's not like a socket in the wall. You can actually have more than one. Let's see. Let's look at diagrams are like really good. I learned very well from looking at a diagram. Socket interface. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Alright, yeah, I understand it. You know, basically anyway. Yeah, so we're gonna do it, well, see, we actually can't just put socket dot timeout because that's not the actual socket. That's why I put this comment here, because I don't think it's given the proper name. It's misleading. The socket itself is actually right here, network.socket. It's starting to rain here. It's thundering and all that. It's pretty yucky. It's pretty yucky out there, dude. It's coming down. I just hit a key on accident. Did I mess something up over here? Nope. Okay, cool. Alright. So yeah, we're gonna have to, I think, add the timeout thing here. And like, I suppose we would just add it like right after this line. We would just say n dot network socket, right? and then put dot set timeout. And I actually like to type it out when I'm learning it, so set timeout, and we're gonna set it to I don't know, like how do we, should it be like, what if the character goes AFK or something? Like, we'll just set it to 100 for now, and I'll put a caution comment here because we're gonna go through all these caution comments at the end of the project and fix them all to make sure that we are doing it correctly.